The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is brought to you by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
Before introducing today's guest, I'd like to take a moment, since purely coincidentally, we sit in this studio filming today's show with United States Congressman Ryan Mackenzie, a Republican from the 7th Congressional District, by the way. But it is Columbus Day today. And I would be remiss if I didn't point that out, as I always do for holidays, and wish everybody out there a happy Columbus Day. And I have to say, I know that things are returning to normal in this country because I haven't had one lunatic Democrat come up to me today and wish me happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And thank heavens that America has regained its bearings and is back on its moorings. And it really is refreshing. Having said that, back to our guest, United States Congressman Ryan Mackenzie from the 7th District. Ryan was first elected in his first term in 2024 in the Republican wave that swept Pennsylvania. And in doing so, he became a part of history because in Ryan's defeat of Democratic incumbent Susan Wild, he joined fellow Republican Rob Bresnahan, who simultaneously defeated Democratic incumbent Matt Cartwright, which provided the margin of the Republican majority in the United States House of Representatives. That's how important this media market is to the nation and how important Pennsylvania is to the nation. Ryan is no stranger, though, to creating history because he became, along with his mother, Milo Mackenzie, the first mother-son pair to simultaneously serve in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Ryan had been first elected to the Pennsylvania House in 2012. Ryan's educational credentials are excellent. He was born in Allentown and graduated from Parkland High School, matriculating to NYU, or known as New York University, a highly prestigious university, by the way, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in Finance and International Business. And then Ryan went on to Harvard, where he received his MBA from none other than the Harvard Business School. He serves on 3 important committees in Congress: Education and Workforce, Foreign Affairs, and Homeland Security, and he is chairman of the Workforce Protection Subcommittee. On today's show, we will discuss the continuing government shutdown, the Chuck Schumer Democratic government shutdown, let's be clear, as well as President Trump's historic peace deal in the Middle East between Hamas and Israel. Ryan's access to intelligence, at least that which is not classified, as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, gives him an exceptional point of view that we hope to take advantage to educate all of us on what's really going on in the Middle East.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial. The area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Ryan, welcome to the Volpe Report.
Thanks for having me on, Chuck. Great to be here today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and I love your surroundings and background, the American flag and the beautiful buildings behind you. This is the first time I've done a United States congressman that doesn't have the Capitol from Washington is the backdrop. So honestly, it's a very good departure from our normal view, because at some point, as pretty as those views are, our viewers are going to say, the Capitol again? So actually, it's perfect breaking it up. And
well, we're here in downtown Allentown, so beautiful setting behind us.
There's no doubt. And this is your first time on the show since you've been sworn in, so we're breaking some ground today. And here we sit, Ryan. We're going into now, it'll be our 3rd week. We've got 2 weeks in our rearview mirror of being shut down. Unconscionable damage has been done, not just in the obvious things, the fundings and the lack of paychecks, the people that are suffering, that need that money delivered to them, the federal workforce that delivers those things and those services, not only all of that, but then there's all the collateral damage. It destroys our bond rating. It hurts our financial status. The dollar's devalued. So your thoughts on the shutdown? I've had different perspectives. I like yours.
Well, first and foremost, we need to be very clear that this is the Schumer shutdown. Chuck Schumer has shut down the Senate. does not want to negotiate, doesn't want to release any of his members who actually think that we should be reopening the government. And that's the critical position right now, because we need 60 votes in the US Senate to actually get the government reopened. We only have 53 Republican senators. We do occasionally get a couple folks, 2 or 3, to come over and vote with us in the Senate, but not enough to actually get to 60. And then those of us in the House, we did our job back on September 19th. We actually were ahead of schedule. We passed the budget, a responsible budget, a continuing resolution through the House, went over to the Senate, and then again, Chuck Schumer shut the government down. Now, there are a couple reasons why that is happening right now. First and foremost, I think everybody needs to be aware of the politics of this situation. Chuck Schumer went along with a continuing resolution, this same level of funding, back in March of this year. And a bipartisan group of senators, the House passed it, became law. But that was also, it should be noted, built off of a budget from the last year of the Biden administration. Okay, so this is a bipartisan continuing resolution. The only difference, the change now, is that Chuck Schumer got all hell from his side of the aisle. AOC and the other liberals, the progressives, said, you're not resisting Donald Trump enough. And if you don't hold out and resist against Trump, we're going to take you out in a primary. And so he is afraid of it, that primary from AOC or some other radical. And so he is doing everything he possibly can to show his Trump resistance and therefore shut down the government. He doesn't care at all what that means to federal employees. He doesn't care what it means to the U.S. economy. He doesn't care at all about any of these things that Democrats have said for years that they care about, things like the WIC program, which is Women, Infant, and Children funding for low-income individuals who need food assistance. He doesn't care about individuals who right now aren't getting their mortgage serviced if they are in a floodplain or need to get flood insurance. So all of these things that Democrats have said they care about these programs for years, it's a bunch of nonsense. Chuck Schumer has shut the government down for political reasons, his own political life, but also, again, the radical left is now the one the Democrats are so beholden to. And so they have to do their resistance movement regardless of what it means to the rest of the country.
Yeah. Well said, Ryan. And two comments on that. One is that there have been approximately a dozen clips going back 30 years of Chuck Schumer's face looking right into the camera on the Senate floor and giving an impassioned speech about how, despite the policy differences, you cannot shut the government down. It's a bad precedent to set. You cannot expect your colleagues on the other side of the aisle for them to come to the table on policy matters with a gun to their head. No one will negotiate in good faith in that way. And it's, quote, irresponsible for any party, including our own. In March, he referred to the Democrats, we cannot shut the government down. And there was hell to pay by him. They almost stripped him of his leadership position. And the second thing I want to say, Ryan, is I already made reference. I was listening to, I think it was Face the Nation yesterday with Margaret Brennan, and she's questioning the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. And here's her point in this. And of course, the media is biased and one-sided. So she was more like an interrogator than a questioner. Having said that, she asked the Vice President, she said, well, how come President Trump is not calling the leaders, as Chuck Schumer has said, into his office to try to negotiate the end to this shutdown? And J.D. Vance looked right at her and said, you know that's an irresponsible question. You know that the reason we're shut down is that Democrats have made unreasonable demands that we can talk about affordable health care and the Affordable Care Act. We could talk about some of those issues and negotiate them, but we cannot do it at gunpoint. We cannot do it where he has said, you give us these things or else we're shutting the government down. And J.D. Vance hammered her on that. And let me just one final point. That couple of those demands are ridiculous. They want to continue for the Affordable Care Act, Ryan, the federal tax credit program, which has benefit people. Some make $500,000 a year. They want to continue that. It's $1.5 trillion. They want a new spending to bankrupt. And they're saying to the president, take our demands or we're shutting down the government. So take it from there.
Yeah, well, on your first point, Chuck, you are correct. The Democrats have been on the record every shutdown, every continuing resolution saying you don't mix policy with funding the government. And that's something that I think is correct. And they should listen to their own words, but they're hypocritical. They don't care about that. They've never cared about being hypocrites, but we have them on tape. So that is helpful to make our point that we should be reopening the government. I already voted for it in the House. Senator McCormick and actually John Fetterman here in Pennsylvania, in a bipartisan fashion, has voted to keep the government open. So all of us believe that the government should be open. These other policy discussions, it's been a bit of a moving target. To quite honestly, the Democrats have thrown all different things on the table, seeing through it against the wall, seeing what would stick, so to speak. And what they landed on was the Affordable Care Act tax credits. They had a whole bunch of other demands. Those have largely fallen by the wayside because they realized they weren't going to happen. And so now they've stuck on Affordable Care Act tax credits. The thing is, we need to reopen the government before we have that discussion. And like you said, you can't do it in a position where you're being held hostage. Now, the other thing is that they don't want to recognize we had for months already been talking in a bipartisan way about how we would extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And to your point that you made there second, is it's a reasonable policy discussion to say, how do we keep affordable health care for people that need those kind of tax credits, but make sure that they aren't going to high income individuals, make sure that they aren't going to individuals who aren't even eligible for them, or fraud and abuse programs that we know exist in this kind of program and system. And so we want to see reforms. We've been having those conversations. We were doing it before the shutdown. But quite honestly, the shutdown has derailed those conversations and taken us away from that policy, which could actually help the American people. And so, again, it is what I say reckless of the Democrats to shut down the government as the way they are in hopes of getting some kind of other deal when they know that that's not the way this works. It never has been. They've said that that's not the way the system should work. But yet here we are. So again, we need to maintain our position. And what is also happening is that Donald Trump and the administration are leading actually in helping to mitigate the damage done by the Democrats. And so we're seeing that they're going to find a way to pay our military service members because, my gosh, I mean, I can't imagine a worse thing than people who are serving our country, many of them living paycheck to paycheck, like a lot of other Americans, and now saying that they're not going to get paid for their service. That's what the Democrats want to do. That's what they actually voted for in the House and Senate. And so thankfully, we did the responsible thing. We voted for it. We were obstructed by Chuck Schumer, but Donald Trump is going to step in with his administration to make sure those service members get paid.
Again, very, very well said. I have to add one comment to that. When you were saying the point about how many of our servicemen who put their lives in harm's way for the freedoms we enjoy that are living paycheck to paycheck. When Minority Leader in your chamber in the House was asked point blank in a news conference if he would forgo his pay, as many other members have done, you can't imagine. No lawyer gave better doublespeak. He said, we get paid biweekly, and I have a couple of weeks before I have to make that decision. Well, the press, the couple weren't having that. They came back and said, well, what if it is still a shutdown? It's still going on. He said, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'll make up my mind. And he would not unequivocally say. So again, the hypocrisy and double standard are nauseating.
Let me just say this. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats right now, is a total embarrassment. Not only in the response that you gave there or you saw there, but when he talks about opening the government, he continually tries to push it on the Republicans. And thankfully, the mainstream media, who is no friend of ours, never wants to actually look at the facts on the ground. They are even calling out Hakeem Jeffries, saying, well, that's not true. You know it's not a Republican shutdown because it's Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats are the ones that are holding it up. And he is getting called out left and right on that single point, and he can't even answer to it. They say, but it's simple math. You need 60 votes. And he does the same doublespeak that you're talking about, tries to obfuscate, tries to change the subject. It is embarrassing that is the best the Democratic Party can put up.
You know, and I'll say, as an old trial lawyer, Ryan, that it's so obvious he's lying. You know, it's so you can tell when a person is truthful and committed and sincere. You don't have to go to school for that. And you could see by the way his eyes look up at the ceiling and everything. He almost has a half smile on his face because he's amazed at his own lies. Nauseating. It really is.
Yeah, they know what they're selling is not truthful, but they continue to have to peddle it because they have nothing else. They have no policy to stand on. They have no platform. They have no real leader. I mean, again, I think AOC is the actual leader of their party. I mean, for a while, it seemed like it was Nancy Pelosi who was leading the charge. And then she stepped back and, let Hakeem Jeffries dangle in the wind a little bit. Until AOC came along and swatted him like a piñata. So, I mean, it's really AOC that's calling the shots over there. Hakeem Jeffries has no power, no credibility. Neither does Nancy Pelosi anymore. And again, it's the tail wagging the dog with AOC calling the shots, both on Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries.
So well said, Ryan. Ocasio-Cortez is the leader of the Democratic National Party. She's the leader in the House. She's the leader because the fear factor that she has put up Chuck Schumer's spine of running against him in the Senate. She is running the tail wagging the dog of the Democratic Party. Let there be no question about that.
And let me just say this. I mean, I think that the Democrats have realized that the Republicans with President Trump in the White House, we have Senator McCormick now helping get the majority over in the U.S. Senate, and us in the U.S. House with Speaker Johnson leading the way. We have been running an agenda for the American people. We passed historic tax cuts for all Americans. Every single American is going to see a tax break come next year when they file their taxes. You see no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, expanded no tax on Social Security. So tax relief for hardworking Americans. We delivered on that. Then when you look at the border, we were actually able to work with the administration. They did a great job of changing the policies, which Joe Biden said couldn't be done to secure that border. The president, Donald Trump, secured the border. We backed it up by passing historic investments in our border security and Department of Homeland Security to make sure that that border stays safe for years to come. And then you see the historic negotiations which are going on in the Middle East, bringing peace to a region that has been so damaged and devastated by violence for such a long time. The reason I bring up all those things, Chuck, is the Democrats see that Republicans with Donald Trump were actually getting things done for the American people, bringing peace around the world. We were on a roll. And they felt like they couldn't do anything about it. And so they cooked up this new scheme. And again, they don't care if it hurts the American people, if it hurts the American economy. They are so hell-bent on doing anything they possibly can to stop Donald Trump that this is what they came up with. This is their latest scheme, it's their latest trick, their latest gimmick. And again, if there are people who get hurt along the way, they don't care. They want the power back. They want to try to figure out a new path forward for their leadership and their power. They aren't going to get there because I think the American people are going to see right through that ruse, and we're going to get this government reopened, and we're going to get back on track with delivering for the American people.
Again, I keep saying well stated. It is, and I'll leave this. You made a nice segue to our part two. We're going to go to commercial break now. We're going to come back and talk about the Middle East. You sit on the very important Foreign Relations Committee in the United States House of Representatives. So your insights, because that's one of the subjects of your purview and your jurisdiction, you'll have some great insights for the people in Northeast and Central Pennsylvania. So we'll be back right after this message.
There are more places you can see the Volpe Report. Watch every Sunday morning at 10:30 on Fox 56 or watch on YouTube at the Volpe Report. More ways to watch. Still the same premier political talk show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians.
Welcome back, Ryan. The second segment of our show. Actually, believe it or not, I told you how fast a half hour goes. We went about 5 or 6 minutes past the halfway point in that segment, so we only have about 6 or 7 minutes left. And by the way, thanks for correcting. I had said the Foreign Relations Committee of the United States House. That's actually the committee in the United States Senate. It's Foreign Affairs in the United States House, so thank you. But under that important committee and its jurisdiction and purview, speaks for itself, foreign affairs. The peace in the Middle East, other interventions, including military interventions, all that falls under the purview of that important subcommittee you sit on. So we've just had President Trump has just negotiated and been the leader in creating an unprecedented peace in the Middle East, which he had said he was going to do. All the hostages, thank God, have finally been released by Hamas. But talk a little bit and educate all of us about what the details are, what it means for Hamas. Is there going to be a Palestinian state? Who would be the organizing principle in the government of this Palestinian state? And is it going to be split up in pieces, and part of it in the Gaza Strip, part of it in the... It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to have that be the case, but you're the expert. I defer. Tell us about this peace deal and what the ramifications are going forward.
It is a historic peace deal that President Trump and his administration were about to bring about. And it's a two-phased peace agreement. And so phase one is what we, myself and others, have been advocating for since even before I was in office. We always said there can only be a cessation of violence when all hostages are returned. And so that was always very clearly the premise that we were working off of. At this point, that part of the negotiation actually went through. And so all hostages have been returned and reunited with their family. Many that have lost their lives, unfortunately, will not be returning, but all surviving hostages have been returned at this point. So that, coupled with a cessation of hostilities, aid coming into Gaza, and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, taking a step back, that was all part of phase one of the peace agreement. And then phase two is what you're talking about, is can we get to that longer term peace deal? It obviously cannot be Hamas that is going to be in charge anymore. They are a terrorist entity. They need to lay down their weapons. That is part of part two of the peace agreement. And so what we would like to see is actually there's going to be a peace board that is going to be put in place of individuals throughout the Arab and Muslim world, but also headed up by President Trump and others. And so we're going to have that opportunity to start establishing a new government in Gaza. And what you see is even the people that I've talked to from Gaza and from the area, they say they don't want Hamas as their leadership, but they haven't had an election there for quite a long time. And so Hamas was just controlling it through force. And so now that President Trump has been able to step in, and he told Hamas that, again, you guys cannot be in that position. We are going to put in a new entity, but it's only somebody like President Trump that could actually get Hamas's attention and willingness to step back from that position. And so that is part of the peace agreement. It is written down in those 20 steps that were laid out by his administration. And so we have this opportunity. We do have to go through a process where each step is going to be taken gradually. You need to make sure that both sides are holding to that agreement as you inch forward in that process. But ultimately, if you can get there, this is a turning point for the entire Middle East because it recognizes Israel's right to exist and also establishes a new governance, a new system in Gaza. And so that is something that has been elusive for decades, but ultimately, again, we are on the path to get there. And again, it's President Trump who brought it about. The Democrats want that kind of reckless language that they used on the campaign trail, saying President Trump was going to bring about World War III and all this stuff. Total nonsense. What you see is actually he is the peacemaker, something that Joe Biden could have never accomplished in a million years. But it's actually President Trump that led the way on this one. And so really a great turn of events in the Middle East, and something that people on both sides, both in Israel and the Palestinians, they are both celebrating because this new peace deal has been brokered by our American president.
Well, Ryan, thank you for the explanation and the education I'm also getting, especially on the part two part of it, in terms of the transitional type of government, effectively this commission or this ruling body made up of various representatives that will control the peace and the governance, because there needs to be something in that vacuum. I didn't know how that was going to go about, I'm sure, like most people. So that was very helpful. Yep. In the fact that we will have a role in that.
That's correct. So it's been described as a peace board with President Trump at the head. There's also been talks that Tony Blair could possibly co-lead that with President Trump and be there on a maybe more regular basis, just like we saw President Trump laid out the framework of this negotiation and this deal, and then he had envoys who went out there and executed on a day-to-day basis with a lot of different actors, whether it was the Qataris, Egypt, Turkey, all different stakeholders from throughout the region coming together to get this done. And so that peace board would have President Trump leading the way. Somebody like Tony Blair would also be leading up a lot of the on-the-ground negotiations, and then a lot of other individuals with the interests of the region at heart and at stake on that board as well. But again, it cannot be Hamas. We've been very clear about that. We need them to lay down all of their weapons. That is a condition of this peace deal, and it's something that they actually agreed to. It's hard to believe right now, sitting here, that that is something that President Trump was able to negotiate in there. But that was a key part of this process, and something that a lot of people, understandably and rightfully, weren't willing to cave on, was new leadership being needed in Gaza. And again, he was able to deliver in this peace deal. So again, now we need to move forward, start implementing these steps. It's wonderful that we get to celebrate the reunification of families and hostages being returned. But now we need to find our path to that lasting peace that has proved so elusive.
And you sit in a front row seat, Ryan, to see that in the Foreign Affairs Committee. And we'll keep having you back on the show as new things develop, because I consider you now an expert on the subject. And I will also point out that a lot of our far-left friends and colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats, scoffed at the notion that President Trump could win the Nobel Peace Prize. And in fact, in reality and in substance, he should have won it going away. And I'll remind our viewers here, I know you know, in his first term, the Abraham Accords that he got done was the most significant peaceful development negotiated by a United States president since Jimmy Carter brought Egypt and Israel together in the 1970s. It's almost 50 years since we've had that kind of substantive. Well, President Donald Trump has doubled down now. We have the Abraham Accords. I don't know what they're going to refer to this as in terms of the history books, whatever the name they attach to it. This is now a second significant, so much for the idea that this president is committed to World War III. We're going in exactly, and we're already getting incremental, I agree, movement, and you'll be talking to us on another show about that when we have something more concrete to talk about Ukraine and Russia.
Absolutely. And all of a sudden you start to see these dominoes fall where people, again, look to America for leadership, something they had not done for the past 4 years when Joe Biden was in the White House. But now all of a sudden, again, I think this agreement in the Middle East starts opening up more opportunities and avenues for peace for Donald Trump to lead the way.
Without question. Regrettably, Ryan, our time has run out. I told you the half hour blows through pretty quick. But thanks for your time and education on what's going on, especially in the Middle East. And we'll have you back here soon to talk about other things as they develop both there and, as I said, with Russia and Ukraine. But thanks, Ryan, for your time.
Thank you, Chuck.
Keep up the good work.